Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Hey Eagles fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No-Huddle Show podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, and be sure to bookmark that to get the latest Eagles news and analysis. Today I'm once again joined by my No-Huddle Show co-hosts Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele. Well, the Eagles have a long trip ahead of them, their final plane trip, heading out to California to face the Los Angeles Rams in pursuit of their 7th straight win and to keep pace with the Detroit Lions for a number 1 seed. We'll get into that game in a second, but first I want to bring in Bob and Cayden. Guys, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Getting ready for the trip to LA. Cayden said a couple weeks ago he couldn't wait to go see Cowboys Jerry World. I kind of feel the same way about SoFi Stadium. I've never seen it. It's one of the few, might be the only NFL stadium I've not. Oh no, I haven't been to Atlanta either. But I think those are the only two I haven't been to: Atlanta and SoFi. So I'm looking forward to going and seeing it.
Nice. SoFi is really a good place. It's a good spot to watch. It's a good vantage view, at least for us, like press-wise, it's a good vantage view. For anybody traveling that's going to go see this, you guys will like the station. It's stadium. It's a really one of the better new stadiums that are out there. It's really cool to fun. It is really nice to see. Cayden, how you doing, man?
Yeah, excited to doing good. I'm excited to watch this game. Plus, looking at the date here, I'm like a week from Thanksgiving, so I'm excited about that as well. My favorite holiday, so excited to eat next week. I mean, that's a week of anticipation for good food, so that's where I'm at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I can't wait to hear the Adam Sandler turkey song. It's about time. There's certain things you want around this time to hear. I haven't heard it yet, and I'm feeling disappointed. So I think I might have to play it myself for YouTube Music. Thank you guys very much on that. But enough of my gripes about lack of Thanksgiving music and everything else. Let's get right into things here with the Eagles. We're going to start with this right now. The Eagles currently have surprisingly, and I'm shocked I'm saying this, and I'm shocked that pretty much everybody listening to this, and you guys are that. The Eagles have the number 1 defense in this league right now, which is crazy heading into this week, and a number 2 pass defense overall. When you look at the offense, they're still a top 10, but they're not the top offense overall. And you look at the way that the names on this roster, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, you think they'd be, like the expectation was coming in to be top 2, top 3 offense in terms of that. Bob, I'm going to start with you with this. What's holding back the Eagles' offense from being a top 3 unit this season?
I would say 2 things. One is let's look at points that they left on the field. If we're just going by, if we're talking about number 1 scoring offense, which I'm not sure you are, but I think you're talking more about yards. But
Yards, yeah.
From a scoring perspective, they would probably be in the top 3 if they didn't leave all those field goals on the field that Nick Sirianni chose to go for it, and also the Jake Elliott missed field goals last week. They'd probably be a top 3 offense if you put those points on the board. They're still a top 5 offense. The amazing thing to me, Chris, this is I don't even know how I'd begin to look it up. How often they're last in the league in passing attempts, which is why they're probably not one of the top offenses in the league, but first in the league in rushing attempts. I'd like to know, when was the last time, if ever, I'm sure at one time it was true back when they had leather helmets and maybe a little bit beyond that a team was last in the league in passing attempts and still a top 5 offense. It's pretty amazing that a team that relies so heavily on the run like this team does is they're 5th in the league in yards. That's the case, because rushing yards, when we talk about it all the time, can be really grinding. You you might get 2, 3 here, but they just have tons of explosive rushing plays. Um, you know, and it is curious to see if they can sustain this. And Kellen Moore kind of alluded to it yesterday. There's going to come a time where they're going to have to win a game through the air. Maybe it's this week, but that time is coming, and it's going to be a big test for Jalen Hurts and the offense.
Yeah, it's going to be tough there. Yeah, as you mentioned, they are fifth overall in total yards per game at 379.9. But yeah, passing off is 22nd, 198.6 yards. It's really kind of tough to do that as well too. That's a good idea to look at see when the last time they had an offense like that, like see the offense like that. Offhand, I have no idea. Offhand, I wonder if it's like the Bears with McMahon and all that stuff, where you just relied on their defense, was like grinding and like, ugh,
especially
one of those
especially especially attempts. It's like last in the league in attempts. I just that's really hard to fathom.
Yeah, it's crazy. Cade, what do you think? What do you think's holding this back, this Eagles offense, to be from being a top 3 unit?
Yeah, I think you guys both just talked about it. The biggest reason is the passing game. Maybe it's a part of their identity to run the ball now, and it works well. But at any point this year, I feel like it hasn't truly gotten into a great rhythm, and it hasn't been as explosive as you would expect. Chris, you said they're just 22nd in the league, and you would be surprised when you have guys like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. I know. Guys like AJ missed time at the earlier with 3 games, and Goddard missed a chunk. So maybe just the continuity hasn't been there, but it just hasn't been as explosive as you would think it would be. And they haven't been willing to do it as much, with being last in the league in attempts, like Bob said. So I think that's the biggest reason. But um, Kellen Moore said it, and I mean, and it's an honest truth that they're going to have to at some point, get that thing going, especially when they're playing better defenses down the stretch. When they're going to have to play a team like the Steelers, who could shut down the run, in 2 or 3 weeks. Like they're going to have to get that part of the game going. But the passing offense just hasn't lived up to expectations. It's still a really good offense, being number 5, and there's not too much to complain about. But that area has not flourished.
Yeah, you're hoping that they get it right, because it's you look at some of these teams they're going to play, and it's going to be tested early. We look at we'll talk about that in a second, but and a little bit later on. But like you look at the Steelers, guys, teams that do well against the run, they stop it. The Ravens, historically, this year their defense not so much, but a lot of times, in the Commanders, we saw they won. They were playing a 6-1, and they stopped it for most of that game last Thursday, but until they basically wore them down. Yeah, they have to fix that off the passing part of it quickly, or at least make gradual attempts as they get toward the playoffs more and more. Or it could be a quick ending. Like a quick ending for this team for me is the divisional round. They need to get they had the talent to get beyond that, but ugh, they need to fix some of this passing issues that they have. Now we're gonna go back on the defensive side of the ball and look at the edge rusher part. We had some news yesterday. We're recording this on a Thursday. We got some news Wednesday. A league source told NJ Advanced Media that Bryce Huff was getting surgery to repair his left wrist, the one that he's been wearing a cast ever since the the warm ups against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to start with you, Cayden, on this. What are your thoughts about this edge rushing group without Huff? And is it good enough to get the Eagles deep into the playoffs?
Yeah, it's probably about the same. I don't know if Bryce Huff being out uh, really changes how I feel. He hasn't really made. I know he got a sack against Dallas, and he's had moments since the bye week, but ever since the wrist thing became a thing, he hasn't been playing a lot of snaps. So I really don't think it's going to change too much. It definitely affects your depth. I mean, you don't have as many guys to roll now, but I'm not really sure how productive it was if he was hurt this entire time, or it looks like he was because he's had this club on his hand. Um, for him to even be playing, because one, if he's not going to be an effective player, I don't understand why he was playing in the first place. Two, for his own sake, you gave him a 3-year deal. He hasn't had a good year, but you hope that maybe that he could bounce back. You know, maybe next year if you bring him back for another year, and you hope he can bounce back and that he's healthy. So just taking him out there for more risk didn't really make much sense in the first place. But now that he's out of the picture, it's about the same. I think this edge rush group is might be good enough to go on a playoff run, because I believe the secondary, with Cooper DeJean and Quinn Mitchell and all those guys, the way they've been playing, the coverage has been a lot better. So I think they're able to get home more often. And guys like Josh Sweat have been playing well, and Nick Sirianni raved about Nolan Smith yesterday. I do think he's shown some progression. Brandon Graham's still a pretty productive, reliable player at his age. So I think the pass rush group is fine, which might be good enough to go in the playoffs deep in the NFC, because uh, I really don't. Other than the Lions, I haven't been impressed by the rest of the NFC too much. So I do think, like Chris said, like you said, like it's NFC Championship or bust kind of, and I do think they have the talent overall in this defense to get there. Maybe the pass rush gets elevated by the coverage a little more, and that's what gets them there to the NFC Championship. But in that NFC Championship, if they get there, uh, I'm not. I don't know if they'll have the pass rush to stop Detroit. I know Detroit's a run heavy team, but that's an offense that's a juggernaut, and you're gonna have to be able to affect Jared Goff. We've seen when Jared Goff, if that were the matchup and they were to make it, we've seen him get affected by pass rush before, and that's what kind of throws him off when you get them into passing situations. And I don't know if I have a ton of confidence if you make this pass rush group pin their ears back, and they have to be the one to wreck a game. They need to, step up for the coverage, and if the coverage isn't as good, they need to get home faster. I just don't know if I have as much confidence in that. I think they have a bunch of good to solid players. Like I think Josh Sweat's a good player. I think Nolan Smith could become a good player, and he's continuing to get better. And like I said, BG's still solid. Who knows about Jalen Hunt? Maybe he'll make an impact, but they're truly lacking a premier number one edge rusher, like they had in Hassan Reddick last year, and like they hoped that Bryce Huff would become, but he didn't. So that could be the thing that bites them eventually. We talked about them trading for a pass rusher at the deadline. I don't know if they would have been able to get a number one pass rusher, but maybe they regret not adding at least another depth piece, because they might need it if they get into that later stages of the playoffs, and if they play a team like the Lions.
All right, cool. Bob, what do you think?
Yeah, Cayden made a lot of good points here. The interesting, probably the most interesting thing that's going to come out of this is Jalen Hunt. They've been, you know, not really got on the field too much, except for the Dallas game, which was I don't remember the exact snaps he got in, but I imagine a lot of that was late in the game. He played 25 snaps in that game, defensive snaps, and he's played 17 and all the rest. He did play pretty good in that game, and he's got a sack. It's going to be an interesting time for Jalen Hunt, opportunity to get on the field more. But as Cayden pointed out, does it make that big a difference that Bryce Huff is out? No, although Bryce Huff, it's funny if you look at at how PFF evaluates him. His PFF grade for the season is 68.9. His PFF grade against Dallas was 93.2. Again, it's 12 snaps, and his snaps had declined because of this wrist injury. But after a really, really slow start, I think he had 3 pressures in the first 4 games. He had 11 since then in 7 games or 6 games, 11 and 6 games. So he was, at least changing, making the quarterback, feel some heat in that time. So, and the fact that he does have a history makes you say, hey, maybe this guy could have come on and finished strong, and maybe he still will, because the Eagles are still hopeful that he does return before the end of the year. So I mean that's still possible. Maybe comes back with fresh legs and helps them. Nolan Smith's been a definite factor. I think the one thing that helps his pass rush, and you're asking about the edge rushers, but they do get pressure up the middle. Jalen Carter has 33 pressures this year, second on the team, only to Josh Sweat, who has 36. So they do get pressure there, and Milton Williams and Moro Jamo have both also supplied pressure in that way. They both each have 14 pressures, which was tied with Huff for third or fourth on the team. So, I think the Eagles can survive, certainly not having Bryce Huff for a while. But to me, the most interesting thing to watch over the next few weeks is going to be Jalen Hunt, and see, if he's deep into his rookie year now and hasn't been on the field a lot. Here's his chance. What is he going to do with it?
Yeah, it's a big opportunity for him for a guy who was supposed to be in his developmental year and trying to learn that. He's got a lot to prove right now. He's going to be used certainly used a little bit more as well too. Which you mentioned, Cayden, that really has me looking a little bit deeper now and thinking is the depth part, because they really are, they're kind of thin now. I mean, you can bring up Teron Jackson, but I doubt they're going to do that as of now. I mean, that would give you an extra guy at the position that maybe they kick out Milton Williams to play him more on the edge a little bit, more on Jomo. He's got experience playing on the edge beforehand from Texas as well. So I think those are two things you can do, but they really can't afford another injury at this point. And you saw even when it came to Jalen Hunt, he didn't play. Last I believe he didn't play a defensive snap. He played all special teams too, which on that short
Last week,
week.
yeah.
So he's fresh. You can say that. You just wondering. I wonder if he's on a pitch count or what have you, just in terms of.
Chris, you gave me an option. He's fresh.
Oh my God!
It's always a
oh yeah, it's from the '80s or '70s. Yeah,
Whenever you give me a chance to
no.
sing, it's very exciting.
Bob Karaoke is coming up later on after this show. Be sure to listen. I'm just kidding. No. See it. All right, let's go to the inside slant. All right, these guys are going to have something that stood out for them so far this week, or even late last week, being that it was a short week with the Thursday night game. These guys are going to give their insights on something that's going on and give their take on what to do it. So, Bob, I'm going to ask you first. What's your inside slant?
It's going to be two things here with Jalen Hurts. I went with the intention of writing one thing about Jalen Hurts, which I did for this morning about his. This is a guy who's had 9 different signal callers since he was in college in 2016, and yesterday Tom Pelissero from NFL.com wrote 22 young coaches to look for is when the hiring cycle begins, which is we're now within less than 2 months of that beginning, with the regular season that close to being over. And not surprisingly, Kellen Moore is on that list. He's already interviewed in the past. He's been an offensive coordinator of an offense that 2 offenses that were number 1 in the league in yards, and now he's one that's number 1 in rushing, and still and adapted to its players. So I went there with that in mind. Ask Jalen about losing another guy. He wouldn't answer that question, but he was very complimentary of what he's gotten out of his relationship with Kellen Moore this year. I found that interesting. But then the more interesting thing about Jalen yesterday is we found out he was limited in practice for the second time in 2 weeks, and really last week there was no practice because they did all walkthroughs and getting ready for the short week with the Commanders. So essentially it's 2 weeks in a row that he's been limited, and when the injury report came out, it's the ankle. It's definitely something that bears watching. The take on it is that he was doing this preventative program, strength program, maintenance, and this is the end of it. He'll be full participation today and Thursday and Friday, and then be ready for the game on Sunday. But definitely that's something bears watching. And then the last thing, it was a really interesting Jalen news conference yesterday. Jalen was asked about being on Good Morning America on Tuesday, and I thought he really, we don't get to see different sides of Jalen a whole lot because he's very close to the vest with everything he says. But I thought it was really cool. He was there, pumping up the Jalen Hurts Foundation and talking about what he does with the Jalen Hurts Foundation. And he basically said talked about being the son of an educator, son of a coach, and how it matters. Giving matters to him. That he has a lot of respect for. I love this quote. I have a lot of respect for givers. I just thought that was a cool quote. This is a guy who's under the microscope all the time, often picked apart for reasons, and when it comes down to the core of it, he's really a good human being. I wish more people would see that. And from our standpoint, it can be tough. It can be tough sometimes to get him to really let us in and know who he is and what he is. But I think that was a moment where I think he was very sincere about who he is and what he is.
Nice, nice, good stuff. Cayden, what do you think? What's your inside slant?
Yeah, the biggest part that stood out to me yesterday, and I've just been noticing it uh, over the since the bye week, especially, it's been Nolan Smith's development. And yesterday, like I mentioned when we talked about the pass rushers, Nick Sirianni went off about Nolan Smith, calling him one of the toughest guys on the team. Talk about how the way he plays hard as anybody in the National Football League, labeled him a big time contributor. And he also mentioned, I think the biggest part that stood out is like, I think throughout the first year or so of Nolan Smith's career, I mean, he some people may have labeled him as a bust, or at least thought that was the direction that he was going in, because he wasn't making a significant impact. But Nick Sirianni talked about having patience, and he even mentioned that he's not always patient and wants immediate results, but sometimes I think players uh, we kind of after a year or so, if they don't make a huge impact, our first thought is maybe this is who they're going to be. But we're starting to see with Nolan Smith. I think it started in that Cleveland game when he had that big stop on Deshaun Watson. Uh, Pretty much helped save that game, and then ever since then we've seen him just be more and more productive. I know the numbers aren't like like amazing, but like 3.5 sacks, um, 24 tackles. Like he's been a pretty productive player since the bye in his role, and I think he's going to continue to get better, especially if Nick Sirianni, uh, uh, when he says that he is the hardest working guy and he has all these different traits, and he's obviously a really good athlete. When the Eagles took him, he had some upside, and also just shows that maybe pass rusher is a position where strength is a thing, and you have to develop a lot of different technique. And it may take Nolan Smith some time, but he's starting to get there. He's starting to play with more power along with his speed. So I think the Eagles got to be happy with him. And you look at the beginning of that first round. Bob mentioned earlier Jalen Carter, 33 pressures this season. Uh, if Nolan Smith continues to get better, that that draft is going to look like a home run, possibly, even with Sidney Brown if he eventually makes an impact, and Tyler Steen's look good in snaps. So it looks like a pretty good 2023 draft class, especially if Nolan Smith rounds out, and it looks like he's starting to get there.
Nice, cool. All right, now we're going to go to our run pass option segment. This time I'm going to read a statement, and if Bob or Cayden agrees, they'll run with it and explain why. If they disagree, they'll pass and they'll give a reason why they don't agree. So we'll go this, and here we go. Cayden, the Eagles' passing game will be on display against the Rams, and instead of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua combining for 200 or more receiving yards, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith will combine for 200 or more yards. Are you running or are you passing?
Um, hmm. I think I'm gonna. I think I'm gonna pass, just because I don't think they'll need to run the ball a ton. Sorry, I don't think they'll need to throw the ball a ton to beat the Rams. The Rams are 18th against the run, so I think it's another game where they truly won't be tested, where they won't have that challenge. I think they'll be able to run the ball successfully with Saquon Barkley. The Rams have a pretty good defensive front, but they don't have a great group of linebackers. Uh, and the interior players are good, but I don't think they're as good as their edge rushers are. So I think you'd be able to have success with Saquon, stick to this formula, and it's one of these games where I think uh, you want to kind of grind out and wear out the Rams, because if you give the ball to Matthew Stafford too many times and you let them control this game, they have the weapons. You mentioned guys like Cooper Kupp and uh, Puka Nacua. So I don't think they'll do it, because they'll stick to the same formula. And AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are both really great players, but I just don't know if they'll each go for 100, especially with the way this passing offense has been the entire season, like we talked about earlier. It hasn't gotten to that point where I think both our guys are going to go for 100, so I'll pass on it.
All right, cool. Bob, what do you think? You running or passing that both A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith will combine for 200 yards instead of Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua?
I got to pass because, uh, I mean, this is a fascinating thing that tells you how good Puka and Cooper are. They've already got more. They both have they've combined for 500-yard passing receiving games this year, and they've only played 5 games each, and they're so essential to this Rams team. And the reason the Rams are 4-1 and back in it after another horrible, they're kind of doing a carbon copy of what they did a year ago. Horrible start and really rebounding strong. I would almost make them the favorite over the 49ers right now to win the NFC West. And the 49ers just seem a little messed up to me right now. But and then you look at the Eagles. Devontae hasn't had a 100-yard game yet, and AJ's had 3. He's had 2 80s in there as well, and Devontae's had a bunch of 80s in there as well. But to Cayden's point, they don't need to. The reason the Rams need those guys to give them offense, whereas Saquon and Goddard, the Eagles have the whole band together right now. And when you have the whole band together, it's hard to get those 100-yard games because the ball's gonna be spread, and you're gonna have to pick your poison. You want to stop him, or the only way I see those two guys getting 100-yard games is if the Rams just entirely sell out on stopping Saquon, and it opens up things for those two, which I don't think you can do that if the Eagles, but I mean if you're the Rams, you want to play it that way, but I don't think that's a winning way to play it.
All right, cool. And on to our final run pass option question. Bob, Jalen Carter will sack Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford 2 or more times Sunday night. Are you running or are you passing?
Again, I'm going to pass. Jalen's had 3 sacks, 3.5 sacks all year. The only game he had 2 was the Giants. He's constantly applying pressure. He's constantly wreaking havoc. He does it in so many different ways with tackles for losses, just with his presence. Both him and Milton Williams are not Milton Williams. Jordan Davis probably doesn't get enough credit for this because he's been a very good run stopper for this team. Those two just take up bodies, and if you want to talk about why Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean are having so much success, yes, credit to them. They're running all over the field and making plays, but they're also being helped tremendously by Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and the other defensive tackles too. But those two in particular just take up so much attention on the front. And I think that's more of Jalen's thing. Yes, he applies pressure. He's one of the best pass rushing interior guys in the league, but it's hard for those guys to get sacks because he's getting so much attention all the time that he's always being double teamed. It's hard to beat double teams and get sacks. So I'm gonna pass on it, but I'm also I'll run with that. Jalen Carter is going to have a major impact on this game.
Okay, what do you think? Are you running or are you passing?
I'll run with it. I know 2 sacks might seem like a lot, and he only has 3.5 this year, but he has games on the stat sheet or that just don't show up in the stat sheet where he's completely dominant. Last week was one of them against Washington where he takes over parts of that game. We saw again in the Saints game as well. And there's been other moments this year where he's just been a completely dominant player. People always talk about, and edge rushers talk about a lot when you ask them about, maybe a lack of sack, that sacks come in bunches. And if you got 33 pressures and you're taking over games like you did against Washington last year, and the way he's been playing just pretty much throughout this entire season, even though the stats haven't indicated, at least the sacks have indicated a truly dominant season. He has been, and I think eventually those things will come. I think the Rams' offensive line has some weaknesses. You look at their depth chart right now; they have a rookie center and Bo Limmer. Steve Avila is a pretty good player. Kevin Dotson's are solid, but I mean, we've seen Jalen Carter dominant against all types of different offensive linemen. I think they might have a weakness or at least a liability as center as a rookie that a guy like Jalen Carter could take advantage of. Matthew Stafford is a decent athlete, but he's not significantly mobile. He's not going to outrun Jalen Carter. So this could be a game where I could see him get 2 sacks, and he might need to. I mean, we talked about this Rams passing attack. If they don't get a ton of pressure on Matthew Stafford, we're talking about what it'll be a problem. If it would be a problem in the playoffs, it might be a problem on Sunday when you have guys like Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And maybe if the edge rushers can't get it, that's where it comes from. Is Jalen Carter in the middle, and I think he's going to have one of these performances eventually, where he gets 2 sacks, and I'll go with Sunday being one of them.
All right, cool. And the reason why I asked it was because in last year's game against the Rams, he had 2. So it's basically going if you're going to go over or under. So yeah, that's the reason why I was asking that one too. Now we're going to head to the 2-minute drill, where each of these guys will have 2 minutes to answer a question that I ask. If they don't finish in time, the whistle's going to blow on it, and their time is up. Bob, I'm going to start with you on this one. The next 5 games, I want to include the Rams games now. Of the next 5 games, well, I guess someone started. They're at the Rams, they're at the Baltimore Ravens, they're home against the Carolina Panthers, and they're home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then finally they end up at Washington, at the Washington Commanders. Of those games, which one will be the biggest test for the Eagles? Time starts now.
Believe it or not, I'm going to go with this week's game against the Rams. This is a really good team, and we forget, and that's so much different. I pointed out earlier when they have Puka and Cooper Kupp, they are just a much different team. They had their bye week, much like the Eagles. Their season has turned around since their bye week. They were 1-4 after a loss to the Packers. And since then they're 4-1, putting up big yards, playing better on defense. I'm not overly impressed with their win last week against the Patriots, 28-22 score. And they gave up 382 yards, which was the most the Patriots allowed this season. But let's factor in that now the Eagles got to fly across country. Yes, they had extra time this week, but they still got to fly across country. Never an easy thing to do. They've been on a roll. They've won 6 in a row. They've been hearing how good they are. This to me is a real test of and Lane Johnson brought this up last week, unsolicited. Remember what happened to us last year. Don't forget about that. We got to keep. And I talked to him about it yesterday. They got to keep doing things the right way the rest of the way. And if they don't, they could be in trouble. The Rams are a really good team. It's a tough place to play. The Eagles have beaten the Steelers in the past at home. They always beat them there. The game at Washington, of course, will be tough. The game at Baltimore will be tough, but remember this about Baltimore. Baltimore is playing Monday night in Los Angeles against the Chargers. The Eagles are playing Sunday night, so they got to come back on a short week and then play the Eagles. So I'm going with this game against the Rams as the toughest coming up here.
5 seconds left. Bravo. Good job. I commend you for that, and you were able to get under the time. So good job on that. Cayden, same question. Of the next 5 games the Eagles are playing, which one is going to be the biggest test? Your time starts now.
Yeah, I think the biggest test is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Look, I get they lost last week, but I'm pretty confident. And, maybe they weren't as good last year, but this is still a legit Super Bowl contender. And we've seen the Eagles have some good ones this year, the Packers, the Bengals, the Commanders, but they haven't beaten a true legit Super Bowl contenders. And the Rams won't be one of them, but the Ravens will be. They might be the only real Super Bowl contender left. Maybe you could argue the Steelers, but you look at the Rams, number 1 offense in football right now, led by Lamar Jackson. And that in itself is going to make it difficult. They haven't really played a quarterback of his caliber other than Joe Burrow, especially one that can move the way he does. Jay Daniels could, but not to the extent that Lamar can. So he's going to present even more challenges. And they've been just so good in every category. Number 1 in total offense. You look at number 2 in rushing offense, number 2 in scoring offense, averaging 30.4 points per game. They're really tough to stop. The Steelers were able to do it last week. Maybe the Eagles can, but it's just going to be really difficult to do, especially with Lamar contending for his 3rd MVP. The different weapons that they have, and then their own version of a great offseason signing, Derrick Henry, having a similar impact that Saquon had. So just stopping that offense is going to be tough. And I think the defense might be good enough to stop this inconsistent Eagles offense that hasn't, truly lived up to its potential in the passing game.
Well, 30 seconds. What's going on? You know, I'm upset I didn't get to blow a whistle. You got it in time, but still, I don't care. I'm blowing a whistle with that just because I feel like it. I don't know, but yeah, good job on that one too. I'm gonna say this really quick. I think it's not either one, and I don't even think Steelers. The reason why I think it's going to be, I think it's the Carolina Panthers, is not because of the team on the field. I think it's mostly the Eagles playing themselves, and we've seen what happened when these teams have looked at it's a natural inclination. Go, okay, we got through the Ravens, we got through this tough stretch, we got the Steelers the following week. Let's let up and try to rest up. And this is where you're going to need your leadership. You're going to need Sirianni. You're going to need a lot of these guys to keep them up and keep them focused and keep them going to not have that natural letdown. Because as much as I hate to say it, I don't foresee it happening. But we've seen the Panthers come back and beat a couple of these teams. I don't think it's happening, but I think it's one of those things where they can make it, if they make it closer. Then you have a whole nother discussion going toward the end of the year, and they don't need that right now. So
I wish I had a whistle. I wish I had a whistle right now because I'd throw a whistle. I'd throw a gross miscalculation.
I'm just saying. I don't know. Maybe sometime I gotta find a way to get a challenge flag in here. I don't know.
They've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their games have been under 300 yards offense. Their defense just stinks. They stink. They stink. As the Grinch would say, stink, stank, stunk.
I'm just saying they have more wins than the Giants. Just saying that.
Oh, there's a high bar.
Yeah, you never know. The Giants, and then they're knocking on the door of the Cowboys. So I don't know. It's a bad year to football. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but yeah, it's a bad year in this league for it. Finally, we're gonna head to our overtime question, where this question is based off of what's going on. We're gonna base this question off of, speaking of a horrible team, the Giants. They decided to make a change at quarterback, moving on from Daniel Jones to Tommy DeVito. It remains to be seen what DeVito can do this season. Not holding my breath. It's going to be great, but I would thought it inspired me. I want to start with you, Cayden, on this one. What's your best example, sports or non-sports, of someone who's coming in to replace someone to do a better job? Now, the only caveat I'm putting and this goes for both of you guys, both you, Cayden, and for Bob, the only caveat I'm putting is you cannot use Nick Foles at all for the 2017 season. So I'm going to go with that. Cayden, what's your example?
Yeah, well, if I can't go use Nick Foles, I'll go with the guy that he beat in the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady replacing Drew Bledsoe after Drew Bledsoe got hurt in 2001. That's the easiest one comes to mind because I think people forget, or maybe not, maybe because I'm young and I just think people forget, is Drew Bledsoe was a pretty good quarterback. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, but the time he got hurt, led the league in passing before. He's in the Patriots Hall of Fame. Like, he was a legendary player for that franchise. And Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick that no one ever heard of. So maybe this is just the easiest answer to ever think of for what happened. But the fact that Tom Brady came in, took his job, kept it, was a 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time MVP, won 6 Super Bowls with the Patriots, 7 in his career, but 6 with the Patriots, led to a dynasty. A guy, what better replacement is that? Do you go from a pretty good player, Drew Bledsoe, to the best quarterback of all time, and by just an injury? So I think that's the easiest one to go with.
You know what's funny is when I do these shows, like I do the rundowns of the Fortunate Guys, I type the stuff and like go back and forth. And I think I wish Word had a thing where you can go back and check the revisions. It probably does. And I deleted out the one part. I was like, and Tom Brady. I'm like, nah, I can't be Tom Brady. I was like, dang it, I should have left it in there. But yeah, you make a good point on top of that. Yeah, Tom Brady's a really good one in terms of that. Bob, who's your good replacement example?
Well, can I just mention too? Um, I'm doing this as one as just to throw a bone to Giants fans because I feel bad for them right now. But he's not my guy. But he's not my top guy. But I'll throw in Jeff Hostetler, the original Nick Foles, who had to come in 15 games into the Giants' 1990 season after Phil Simms got hurt. He came on, won every game he started. He won 2 regular season games against the Cardinals and Patriots, and then took the Giants on a Super Bowl run, and where they upset the Bills, started the Bills' run of 4 straight Super Bowl losses. Played great in the Super Bowl, was 20 for 32 for 222 yards. Great Giants defensive teams, but that Giants team was all about ball control. Bill Parcells was brilliant. He kept the ball away from the Bills. Really explosive offense. That was a great Super Bowl, by the way. It was in Tampa. Whitney Houston sang the national anthem. It was one of the coolest Super Bowls ever. And the Scott Norwood wide right, will live in Buffalo. Infamy. It created a movie, Buffalo 66, I think it's called, The Sad Tales of the Buffalo Bills. But it's not even really about the Bills losing Super Bowls. But it's in the but my guy, I'm going to go with my guy here. I'm going to go with my Michigan State guy, drafted in the 4th round the same year that RG3 was drafted first by Washington. They got their future quarterback, and Kirk Cousins launched his career in the league. He became the starter. He moved on to Minnesota. Now he's in Atlanta. He's made $281 million in his career. And RG3, it seems like, has been doing broadcasting work for a decade now. I know it's not that long, but it seems like that. And Kirk Cousins still going. Maybe he hasn't won a whole lot of playoff games. Maybe he hasn't won, but he won that battle with RG3. He kicked his butt, and he's still kicking his butt.
Yeah, I'm shocked he still stuck around that long. I really didn't. Yeah, after what Washington went through quarterback wise before then, the fact they had both of them in the draft, in my opinion, Shanahan mismanaged RG3. RG3 should have been playing still. I thought he went right if he didn't cap him in with that bad knee, and he did further damage on it. But yeah, that was a good one too. Mine, I'm going off the board. I'm going away from the sports thing, and the guy I'm picking revived a franchise after this guy was called one of the worst Batmen that ever did it in George Clooney. I'm going Christian Bale. I thought you look at the way that it revitalized that, at least for DC for a moment. It revitalized that brand, the Batman brand. He had 3 good ones, including the Dark Knight. That was still one of the better comic book movies of all time. And I look at the way that he came in and reinvigorated and played the role, not only just Bruce Wayne, but also as Batman as well too. I thought he did both elements of it, where you can make fun of the voice. I don't know what's going on. You can make fun of it, what have you. I don't know, but I still think we look at both things he did. I thought he did a good job. I thought I was going to change a little bit. So yeah, I'll go with Christian Bale. But you guys have some really good answers on top of that. Well, guys, we did it. We got through it. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. Bob, have a safe trip out there in LA and covering that one. Cayden and I will be here covering the team as well too, as I cover what goes on, happens during the game. Make sure to read all of our coverage for this upcoming Rams game on NJ.com/Eagles. So for Bob and Cayden, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one. See ya.